The last thing on earth that I want for you is to be discounting your corporate tours. Hi there, Kelsey Toner here, the founder of Guest Focused Tour Business Coaching, where every day we are helping you sell more tours and build a thriving, profitable tour business. How do we do that? Well, with our guest focused formula, we help keep your guests and your guest experience at the heart of everything you do, from tour design and delivery to tour sales and marketing. But here today, we're going to be leaning on our team of experienced tour business coaches and mentors. And we're going to be sharing some tactics and tips when it comes to pricing your corporate tours. We sent out a questionnaire, a survey to our audience, and you told us that pricing in the corporate sector was really tough. It was one of the challenges that you wish that there were some sort of industry standard. You wish that you had more real world examples of pricing. Well, my friends, I am here today to deliver. Do not go anywhere. So if you haven't seen our other videos on 8 profitable corporate niche ideas for you to consider, or whether or not corporate tours are even a good fit for your location or your business, I highly recommend checking out those videos first. But here we're going to break this down into 4 different parts. First, we're going to talk about our cost plus pricing strategy. Secondly, we're going to be talking about profit margins and how much money we want to be making from these corporate tours, because that's going to look a little bit different for every one of you. Thirdly, we're going to share some real world pricing models from our tour business coaches. And finally, we'll wrap up with some best practices. Okay, so let's say you've chosen a particular corporate niche and you've already done some customer research. You've done our guest deep dive to understand the needs, wants, desires, and dream scenarios of those ideal target corporate guests. From there, we're gonna start putting together a package. We're gonna start putting together an offer. And one of the first things we need to figure out is, what are the fixed costs and variable costs of that offer? I'm sure many of you are familiar with these terms, but let's go through a couple quick examples. A fixed cost for a corporate tour or experience would be something that doesn't change no matter how many people are there. So we often think of the guide salary or whoever is hosting the event as one example. It might be a venue rental. That doesn't really matter if there's 10 people there or there's 30 people there, you're gonna have to pay for that. An example of a variable cost would be those costs that change depending on the number of people that are there. Great examples are often food and beverage. So if your corporate experiences involves that, we have to wrap our heads around the fact that it's going to cost potentially 2 or 3 times as much if we have 2 or 3 times as many people on the tour. But beyond some of the obvious costs, I'd urge you to start thinking about how much time you or your team are going to need to spend in order to close that particular client and in order to coordinate and deliver. These hidden costs can take what is often a very generous and juicy profit margin and reduce it dramatically when we start adding up and tallying just how much attention some of these corporate clients will ultimately need. A simple tour pricing calculator, like the one that we offer members of our coaching program, will really help you when figuring these out. As you can see here on screen, here are some fixed costs per the tour. We've got our guide fee, we've maybe got our group transportation if we're renting a bus, and we even put in here some of the back and forth that we know is probably going to be 3 or 4 hours of customer support and some costs leading up to every corporate tour we run. Here are some examples of variable costs per tour. That here is where we can change our gross ticket price, and then we can see down below here in a gross profit margin table, when is our break-even point and when will we start making money. So we can see here in this example, at a $75 per person ticket price, we are not going to be making money, if I scroll to the right, until we have 13 guests. And even then, we're only going to be making a 5% profit margin, or $41. Doesn't quite seem worth the effort. And so this is the beauty of this cost plus calculator, is that we can start to play with the gross ticket price. Okay, let's bump this up now to closer to $125. After all, we've got a number of food stops, we've got transportation that's being provided, and we can start to see that now things get interesting. Okay, now if we are able to get 13 or 14 people, we are now hitting a 46% profit margin, or $735 for that particular corporate tour. So of course, this is going to look totally different if you're doing small corporate group tours like VIP, client engagement and entertainment, versus team building, where you might have a very large volume of participants and you can bring that cost per individual down lower. But here is the most important thing. You've got to know these costs. I urge you not to make the mistake of pricing your corporate offers based on the marketplace, what other people out there are charging. It's important for us to know, what is it going to cost us? At this stage, I'd also urge you to look at additional options that you could offer as potentially upsells or additional things that could be added to your corporate menu. But at this stage, you'd want to find out what that might cost. For example, let's say they wanted to throw in a welcome drink. Let's get a quote on that and get a really good sense of what the variable cost of that upsell offer might be. Maybe they want a big private venue. We could call and get some of the pricing or get an agreement in place to find out what it would cost. to have that corporate venue, or again, transportation options. Get those costs now because it's going to help us down the line. Okay, on to the next part, which is, well, what should we have as our profit margin, right? This is where we get really juicy. My recommendation, and a recommendation of our coaching team in most cases, is to aim for at minimum a 40% profit margin on top of these corporate tours. Now, you might be wondering, oh, is that high? What about the competitive landscape? Yes, all of those are factors, no question. But as a general rule of thumb, here are 3 considerations why I think this is so important. First and foremost, the value and perceived value that you are providing to a corporate entity or an organization is much larger than to your average traveler or tourist. Let's think about it with a couple quick examples. What is the value to that particular company or the owner of that company if their team is able to be more cohesive? If team members are going to be sticking around an extra year or 2 because of how much they love working there or because they feel appreciated? That is a massive savings and a massive return for that tour business owner. Think about the cost of recruiting, hiring, onboarding, and training even just one employee. Think about the productivity gains a particular team might have if they have more trust, rapport, and they love the team that they're working on. On the client entertainment and engagement, what is the value to take a VIP client and their family and wine and dine them and show them a great time to help close a $25,000 contract, a $100,000 contract, $1 million contract? There is enormous value that you're providing. And so the last thing on earth that I want for you is to be discounting your corporate tours. This came up. One of the members of our coaching program was actually discounting the corporate groups that were coming to her because she was stuck in a mind frame of, well, hey, there's more people, so therefore I should give them a better deal. This is simply not the case. Aim for at least a 40% profit margin, and I encourage you to think about going up from there. Those next 2 considerations on why you should put this kind of premium on top of your corporate offerings has to do with the fact that you are going to follow our guest focus formula. You are going to outcare your competition, and you're going to serve these corporate clients at the highest possible level. And the way that you're going to do that is by taking the time to ask them about, yes, their dream scenarios and exactly what their needs and wants are. But more than that, what are some of their biggest frustrations and challenges with some of the other offers or opportunities that are out there? You're going to be able to come up with a unique value proposition that will allow you to charge more because you're not just taking one of your standard tours and then selling it to a corporate group. I'm going to urge you to optimize your corporate offers around a particular corporate client. And by doing so, you get that pricing power. That third element is you do not want to win the race to the bottom price war. So you being more expensive than other offers out there is something that I want you to be comfortable with, and I want you to be able to say in a very clear, succinct sentence, hey, this is why it costs what it does, and here's why it is worth every penny. Okay, now that you've hopefully had a little bit of a confidence boost in terms of getting that nice juicy profit margin, let's have a look at some real world examples of how you can structure your pricings. Now, some of these are from our tour business coaches who I've mentioned, many of whom have done millions and millions of dollars in corporate tour sales. Many of them, by the way, sticking to our 40% plus profit margin rule of thumb. Let's take a first look at Coach Avital's approach in her corporate offerings with Avital Tours. Here is a very professionally done corporate menu where we see a hands-on meal, which is an interactive multi-course meal. It's a 2-hour food and drink experience. It's in the Mission District there in San Francisco. And we see the cost here of $175 per person, plus a $25 per person private event service and gratuity fee, which we'll talk about in just a moment. You see down here everything that's included and some example courses. If we scroll down in the corporate menu, we can see another example with a slightly lower cost. This is a multi-location curated meal, 3 hours, and this can be in the North Beach or Mission District, but just $90 per person. Again, we show everything that's included and some of the examples for the food. Choosing a per person pricing strategy or pricing model like Coach Avital did makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases. If you think about it, it's pretty easy for the companies to budget and it's pretty easy for the companies to understand. There's a good chance that they already have a per person budget. Now, every company's a little bit different, but it also makes sense when they're planning an event where they don't really know the final number of people who are ultimately going to be coming. With a per person pricing model, that makes that final billing quite easy, and they don't have to pay if 20 people aren't showing up. They're going to feel like they're getting great value. But it's also protecting you if they suddenly want to add another 10 or 15 people. We're protecting you against that creep of those variable costs. But there are some instances where per-person pricing may not make sense. One of our coaching members is a great example. Heather, who runs Spark Experiences, again in that San Francisco Bay Area, when she has corporate clients, she has just a fixed fee and she focuses on these sort of VIP wining and dining experiences. So she's got these beautiful Teslas and she says, hey, it's going to cost this much to have your host and to have that Tesla for the day. Whether or not you want to have one person in there, pack it with 3 or right to the gunnels with 5, 6, 7 people. It's the same price. Our coaches, John and Catherine from down in Bulldog Tours in Charleston, they have a similar approach for their larger groups. They think in terms of tiers. So for their food tour experiences, if they're going to have a corporate group, they're going to say, okay, if you're between 1 and 12, we know that we're going to have a dedicated staff member who's going to be hosting that particular group. And if you add beyond 12, or you have multiple groups of 12s, we're going to have multiple tour leaders facilitating that experience and moving them between the different food destinations. So for them, it makes sense to price in terms of tiers. Okay, 1 to 12 people, this is what it costs. 12 to 24, this is your pricing tier. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 23 or 24 people or you've just tipped over and you only have 14. Both of them have said that they get very little pushback from companies who not only have lots of budget to invest in these types of activities, but who also appreciate and understand some of the dynamics in working with groups. Another real-world best practice comes from our friend Andy down at Austin Eats Tours. They do the vast majority of their business with corporate clients, and that's where the vast majority of their profits come from. Now, Andy has found and is the first to recommend coming up with a corporate menu. You'll notice here that in both of the examples before, we have predetermined prices to try and keep things simple. This is to avoid that endless customization, the back and forth, a lot of negotiating. Think about productizing your corporate offers, but Andy then offers the secret sauce. In that corporate menu, you then want to have simple upsells and cross-sells so you can increase the order value from each client, or the potential is there. And we want those upsells, those additional things that you can do to enhance the experience, to be irresistible to those corporate clients. This can be something as simple as, hey, with one click, we can quickly add on a welcome drink for everybody, to kind of stimulate everybody, get the chatter going. We could add in a DJ. Hey, would you want a live DJ or a band even? What about a private venue? Hey, do you want us to take care of that transportation? If you can figure out, obviously, those fixed and variable costs ahead of time, you can add on that healthy 40% profit margin to each one of these upsells. We want to be sure that it is worth your time to add and offer these additional things. Okay, in the final section of this video, we're going to look at 3 best practices that really address some of the questions and challenges that we've heard members of our coaching program bring up when it comes to corporate tour pricing. The first recommendation has to do with tipping and gratuities, and it is to include them in your pricing, meaning include that in the quote, the proposal, the invoice that you're ultimately going to send to that particular client. Now, of course, this varies region to region and culture to culture, but here in that North American context, we've heard that companies simply do not push back on this. They like the idea of making it easy for their staff, the people who will be joining on the event, but make it clear as a line item that you are charging this. The last thing that we want to do is have confusion or having a situation where the people at the event are tipping on top of an included gratuity. We want to make sure that communication is clear, and in the invoice, we encourage you to include a generous tip. Somewhere between 18 and 20% for our American friends would be right on par, and many companies appreciate this. So hopefully that solves that particular pain point for you. The next best practice has to do with accepting payments. We strongly encourage you to consider having non-refundable deposits that essentially you are going to keep if that company ultimately cancels. This is a strong incentive to make sure that we only have serious buyers, that they're only tying up your calendar or your resources if they mean to buy. Secondly, collecting the rest of the payment of the cash very often is done well in advance. Each business is going to be a little bit unique. They may have requests for you, but requesting the money 60 days prior to the event, 30 days prior to the event, this is par for the course, and companies will be used to these kinds of terms and contracts. And the final best practice for here today is remember to get to yes through flexibility. Now, many of our recommendations here are to productize and move to that corporate menu, and yes, have flexibility in your upsells and downsells. But the key item that we heard from our coaches in this regard was do everything you can, you yourself or your sales team, to get to a yes. If you need to have some flexibility in a shoulder season where maybe closing that sale is going to be worth much more to you, then yes, we can be maybe a bit flexible on the pricing. Or use that creativity. Instead of just saying, no, we can't do that, say, well, while we can't do that, here's what we can do. Focus on the positive and try and close at all costs, especially if this is a new space for you. You may have some misalignments with your corporate menu. There might be some inbuilt assumptions that can evolve and change through time. It's important that each one of our customers feels like we've customized and personalized that experience to them. We can still do that with lots of best practices and techniques, even if we are productizing and having a corporate menu. Okay, well, that probably felt a bit like drinking from the fire hose, but I hope you got some value from these real world best practices, tips, recommendations, and techniques. Look, if you are interested in selling more corporate tours, you've maybe gotten a few corporate clients in, but you don't have an active strategy, or it's not a big part of your business. You're drawn to these higher profit margins. You're drawn to the possibility of repeat and recurring business for years to come. And you're interested in diversifying your revenue and maybe adding some revenue sources during those shoulder and off seasons. Then there is one thing that I would strongly urge you to do. And that is right now, book a call, free call with one of our tour business coaches. As mentioned, they have an enormous amount of experience in this corporate sector, and a free 45-minute strategy call with one of them is going to get you a ton more value than I can deliver here in this video. The second reason is we are hosting in our coaching program a Sell More Corporate Tours Bootcamp. This is a 3-day intensive where we're going to go deep on how to create an effective landing page, how to have an optimized and automated sales funnel to move those leads into paying customers, how to put together a corporate menu, how to do corporate pricing as we discussed, and then low-cost marketing tactics to get these corporate offers in front of some of these key decision makers. This bootcamp, this intensive, is for coaching members only. Reserve a spot with one of our coaches by going to guestfocus.com/book a call. Lastly, let me know too down in the comments below. What are some of your pricing strategies if you've been in this space for a while? Any recommendations that you can share with our community? Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.